this evening we're going to be talking about in-home aerobic exercise equipment, and with us is Bill Prusinowski. Bill from the Medical Sports Fitness Center. He has his graduate degree in physical education and exercise physiology from Syracuse University. Bill, welcome to Central New York Running.
Thanks, Dave.
Let's just start by talking about this boom in in-home aerobic and anaerobic exercise equipment that's been going on lately. We see the ads on late-night television, various things ranging from the thigh reducers to treadmills and much more complicated equipment. That's really taking over the market, isn't it?
It's very big, yeah. Some people think that being involved with the fitness center, we're in direct competition with that industry, but we're not really, because we make recommendations for people all the time for certain at-home devices that they might want to supplement their training with. And we work hand in hand a lot of times with people that are interested in using some sort of training at home in addition to coming into a fitness center or running or whatever else they might be interested in doing.
So you do generally recommend this kind of equipment, maybe not particular products, but at least this kind of equipment you think is a helpful accompaniment to membership in a club or to exercise without the equipment?
Well, as long as they use it, yes, it's very helpful to their fitness.
Okay. Let's try to distinguish for people between the anaerobic exercise equipment and the aerobic exercise equipment, because for runners, after all, their primary fitness goal is to improve their aerobic level of fitness.
Right.
What are the two different kinds of equipment, and how do people tell the difference when they're out there looking around at new gadgetry?
Well, basically, aerobic has sort of gotten to be a catch-all word. Primarily what we're talking about, when we're talking about aerobic activity, aerobic literally means with oxygen, and that term has been around for a long time, of course. Aerobic, basically, activity involves something that is continuous, something that is rhythmic, something that will get your heart rate up to a target heart range where you will see a training effect occur in your body. This would include, of course, running, your most basic aerobic activity, but anything else that's continuous and ongoing, your biking, rowing, cross-country skiing, things of this sort. And when you're talking about anaerobic activity, you're talking about activity that does not utilize oxygen. Without getting too technical, there's a whole system of enzymes in the body that break down your basic nutritional foodstuffs for energy. These are usually fast-paced, very vigorous and high-intensity type activities, such as the most common one we think of is resistive training using some kind of weights, dumbbells, Nautilus machines, something like that. There's also very fast burst type activities that might be considered more anaerobic. Football would probably be considered more anaerobic because it's a quick burst, just a few seconds, and then you have a few seconds to recover, though. So that's your basic differentiation between aerobic and anaerobic.
Okay. When it comes to the machinery that's involved in these two kinds of training, obviously on the one hand you can have something like a treadmill, an in-home running device, or a rowing machine, or a cycle for that matter. At the other end of the spectrum, you have your weight machines, and there's a whole range of those devices. Are there people who are producing machinery that tries to do both of those things, that tries to provide both anaerobic and aerobic benefits?
Well, yeah, there are certain claims. The first claim that came out quite a while ago is the concept of circuit training, where if you do a certain kind of resistive training, first with your arms, and then with your legs, and then maybe with your chest muscles, and you continue repetitions on a sequence
like
of
going
machines,
around a universal or stations of a Nautilus,
or even a Nautilus. That if you keep up the pace, you can also keep up your heart rate. So you're getting a certain amount of muscle tone, but at the same time you're getting an aerobic effect. I personally think that it's a big compromise, one way or the other. Personally, I feel you have to do some aerobic training, and you should also do some anaerobic or resistive type training. Concentrating on, say, just running or biking, you're going to get a lot better aerobic effect. Then going off and maybe doing some sort of calisthenic type activity or Nautilus or free weights, then you can get your building and your muscle tone effect. It can be blended together. There are some machines now that there are claims made that you will tone up a little bit as you get an aerobic effect. Again, it depends largely on how you use them, I think. But I see sort of a dichotomy between the two. They're both important.
Right. And we have to be careful to listen carefully to the claims that are being made, and to remember that these are different energy systems in the body that are going to be served by different kinds of exercise. Let's talk a little bit about the usefulness of these aerobic types of machinery. For people who are runners, people who, who regularly run, maybe who do a little bit more running during the spring, summer, and fall months than they do in the winter time, obviously they have to be a benefit for people who want to continue vigorous aerobic exercise without spending a lot of time outdoors during the winter weather in Syracuse. Is that the primary potential purchaser of this kind of equipment?
I would say so. I would say in general, I'm a believer in taking a break sometimes from whatever is your primary mode of training. And if wintertime provides that break, well, great. Personally, I would like to encourage people to maybe Nordic ski during the winter as opposed to run, because this is a good complementary activity. And maybe even do a little biking in the nice weather to complement the running.
So in general, you're in favor of this whole notion of cross-training?
Definitely. I think it adds a lot to your training. It supplements, but at the same time, it sort of gives you a new outlook sometimes when you try a little different mode of exercise, and you might come back to your original mode with a lot fresher situation.
Have you found that people can improve such measures of fitness as VO2 max, for example, by doing the alternative forms of aerobic activity, the biking, the rowing, the
no doubt
treadmill
about
activity?
As we were saying before, I think running is probably indisputably one of the best, of course. But any mode that you take, again, it just involves really what level you train at. You can bike at a very good level that can produce the same sort of aerobic effects that running would, and that goes for indoor biking. One trouble with a lot of indoor modes is that you sometimes they require a certain level of motivation that you just don't get when you're outdoors doing something.
It just isn't as pretty watching the basement walls as it is watching the trees go by.
Yeah, it can get to be a little monotonous a lot of times.
Yeah.
And you don't get sometimes it's a psychological thing that is working against you with indoor exercise equipment.
There's another group of exercisers out there, particularly runners, I have in mind, who also might be benefited by this kind of equipment. And that's the people who maybe are not put together in such a way that they can withstand as many miles as they would like to run during a week, during a month, during a year. They, of course, can seek shelter from potential overuse injuries by going to the other modes of aerobic exercise.
Yeah, this is very true. The great balance, of course, when you're talking about running, is the fact that there is a very real risk of musculoskeletal injuries. And choosing another mode, an indoor exercise bike, a Nordic track skier, even a good stair climbing machine is sometimes just what the doctor prescribed to get around some of these achy joints and overuse syndromes that you come up with in running an awful lot.
Okay. Well, I want to come back and talk about the particular machines one at a time in just a minute. But first, we're going to have to pause for our Centennial Show contest. We'll give you a look at 3 or 4 more of our past guests, see if you can identify them, jot them down on your entry form, and maybe you can get your entry form in by the deadline coming up in September. We'll start you off this week with number 4.